Hi, I'd like to welcome back my good friend Charles Honeycutt, realtor with Real Brokerage and collaborator with me from our Carving Out Your Own Slice of Texas, Dallas Investment Properties. Joining me is my social audio buddy, Lisa Wood. We actually met on Clubhouse, and Lisa is a renovations designer expert. Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me. I am an interior designer and like Ron said, I love renovations. I'm also certified through the Living in Place Institute. So that holds my heart, where I am very passionate about trying to educate people and investors and builders, designers, architects on how to make environments more livable for all ages and stages of life. And so I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And, so when we look at so the whole heart of the video series is we want to show the sizzle, right? So we want to show the properties, but then we also want to talk about how people can get into those properties. And, as I was touring with Charles and we were looking at this duplex, it was actually half of a duplex, right? So it was one half of the duplex. I was looking at it and the first thing that came to mind was there's no way this would pass an appraisal inspection, right? Because an appraiser, they're going to go into the home and they're going to see, is this home livable, right? Is it habitable? And if there's anything like water stains, gashes in the roof, issues where there's exposed plumbing, exposed wiring, any of those items that don't conform to the regular standards with the various lenders, right? Whether that's FHA or whether that's conforming, so Fannie Freddie, the appraiser, they're going to mark that property as subject to. And when you mark a property subject to, it means the repair work has to be done before you can close. So in Charles's case, he has a seller that doesn't want to do the work, right? They want to sell the property as is, right? So your only option is to find either a cash buyer, so somebody who is just going to pay cash and you don't need an appraisal, or we're going to talk about a renovation loan option, right? So Charles, I just wanted to have you kind of, tell us a little bit about that and, that background of, having that conversation with your client and saying, no, we need to find a cash buyer.
A lot of times with these properties, and this one in particular, she'd owned it a long time and had done major repairs. The roof was new in 2017. Foundation repairs have been done in 2014. New AC, new hot water heater in 2020. So, the owner's thought is, wow, I've really done a lot of stuff to it. I should be able to sell this pretty easily. But without those cosmetic repairs, there was paint hanging down in one of the bedrooms, and the kitchen appliances are very, very old. They were the originals, I believe, and they didn't work very well. The microwave didn't work at all. The stove only had one burner working. So all of that's got to be replaced. And like you said, an appraiser is going to come in and see this big 3x3, maybe 4x4 water stain, right at the front door, and paint hanging in the bedroom, and look at the kitchen, and they're going to be like, oh my, this will not meet standards for a lot of these loans. So I had to literally go through with them that these are the options. We sell it to an investor, or try to find that cash buyer that wants to then do the work themselves. And that's a very rare breed. They're out there, but that's very rare. Or you do the cosmetic repairs yourself, and then we put it on the market. And that just wasn't an option. So we were really left then with going with the investor route. And then, explaining to the investors that, how good the opportunity is. The roof's done, foundation repair has been done, hot water heater, AC. So you come in here and put in a new kitchen, probably put in 2 new bathrooms and paint, and you can have a really good rental property. But that is a tough discussion because, they want to get retail. And of course, we always all want to get as much as we can for a property, but it just wasn't going to bring retail in the condition it was in.
Yeah, exactly. And, when I think about that property, and I mentioned mentioned this to you before, so if it was my wife and me and we were looking at that property and we saw the water stain and we saw the gash, we would run the other way, right?
Yes.
Because, as you know, Karen and I, we built a brand new home and we love new. Everybody loves new, right? Everybody loves new and shiny. And, why not, right? It's the Texas dream. So, but you really opened my eyes, and having people like Lisa join us in this discussion is really powerful, because you actually said, no, an investor sees opportunity. And that threw me, right? That totally threw me. So Lisa, you saw those videos. You saw the water stain. You saw the gash. You saw the appliances from the 80s, which, I don't know, maybe to a millennial buyer, they'll think it's vintage. They'll think it's charming, whatever. Maybe there's extra value with that. But you saw that, and now you now have a plate that you can work from, right? You have a baseline. So tell us your initial thoughts, and are you excited about this opportunity? Would you run? Tell us from your perspective and your background, what do you think about it?
Well, as a designer, I can't help but see potential. So I'm able to see past what most people would think would be ugly and see what the possibilities are. It's the way my brain works. But also, since my husband and I became real estate investors, I saw that and like, dang, I want a deal like that. Because we could fix that up. It could be a nice little property. So the great thing, like Charles said, all of that, the 5 major things were done. The only thing I didn't hear you say was the electrical. But if the plumbing and the roof and the HVAC, the electrical and the foundation, if all those 5 things are good, you're good, because the rest is just cosmetic. And in Texas, as we all know, especially in Dallas, you are going to get cracks eventually. We had a house in Highland Village is where we lived, and we did have cracks. We had to come have the house jacked up, and we had to have the back of the house repaired on the brick because it cracked. And so once we got those piers in, it was interesting. We put the house on the market and we got an offer quickly. We were so excited. Well, then they backed out because they got scared of the piers. And actually, in all actuality, in Dallas, if your house has piers, you're stronger for it. And because that clay is going to move. And with heat and the dries and then wet and all that, it's inevitable. It is going to move. And so don't be afraid of piers on the foundation. It actually is a benefit to you. But if you've got those 5 major components in good shape, then the rest is cosmetic. And it is about finding the right contractors, because there are contractors that are really good at being a handyman. And then there's contractors that are excellent renovation specialists. And then you've got GCs that may not want to touch it because they're probably too busy building houses and spec homes and custom homes. Yeah. So if you can find a renovation expert who that's all they do, you can get that done quickly and efficiently. And then it's about finding the right materials if you're going to be an investor, that you don't overdo for the market.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where Charles comes back in as the expert with the real estate, say, this should be your limit.
Yes.
Yeah. And let's say we found that, that unicorn. We have that buyer where they have the capital and they're able to make those repairs. They can buy it in cash. But they also might be interested on the renovation loan side, right, where they could finance those costs. So let's say, Lisa, you join Charles and me, and we're walking through that property, and our buyer is with us, right? And we're looking at the house. With a renovation loan, you have to make sure that anything that does not conform is already counted into the repair work, right? So that is at a minimum. On top of that, you can add things, and I learned this, just this week. You can add appliances on there too, right? So we can replace those 80s appliances and factor that into the renovation loan. So, it's great here in Texas where we've got Nebraska Furniture Mart and you can get 0% financing for 18 months or something. They should be paying me for saying that. But, but if you don't have that, then your option is, if they're offering a rate that's so much higher, why don't you just factor that in, right, into your overall loan, where you can get a loan at a great rate and then amortize those costs of all of those pieces. So, walk us through, you have a buyer, they've got some capital set aside, or they can finance it. What are the things that, based on what you saw in those videos, Lisa, what are the things that you're going to tackle with that particular duplex, where you're not going to break the bank, right? But you're going to make it where they're not going to overpay, but they're going to make it where it's going to be nicely done, and they're going to be able to get, that'll help appreciate and they'll increase the value, but they also will be able to, charge a higher rent.
Great question, because you want to, and I see this happening in multifamily all the time. I see it happening in duplexes all the time as well. So you want to, if the best thing you can do is create yourself a team. So you have Charles, who's the real estate expert, and you, the finance expert. You bring in somebody who has design expertise, and you get a good contractor. And when you've got, and then also an inspector, if the inspection's done, great. If not, you need a good inspector, and you also need a great appraiser. So you create this team, and that's going to be your best bet. Having people that understand if it's going to be an investment, then it's knowing what kind of materials would you want to put in. You don't want to overdo. So you're not going to put in hardwood. You'd probably do an engineered wood or an LVT, which is luxury vinyl tiles that look like wood. And then in terms of the countertop, you're not going to go in with a high-end granite. And quartz, which is really popular right now, is still, it's a medium price range, that it really is going to depend on the market and where the property is located, because you can do some alternative countertops. Like you could go with a laminate countertop. There's some great laminates that they have come far from when it was back in the 80s. And if you know that you have to turn that property over, you can replace a laminate top for less money than you can a granite. So you've just kind of weigh the pros and cons. How long are you going to hold the property? That's another key factor. So when you're looking at the countertop, you're going to look at flooring. You're going to look at paint. Paint does wonders. It can do incredible things. Even switching out electrical, the switches, if they're almond and you're going to switch them to white, that doesn't cost much to do. That's cosmetic. Light fixtures, fans. Everybody has fans in Texas. And so knowing how to buy smart. And if you're an investor that buys a lot of properties, then you want to consider buying in bulk, especially right now because of lead times. And when the Texas freeze happened, and that affected the Freon that goes into some appliances are 6 months out. So you have to take all that into consideration when you're trying to do it. But some investors are going to go about this where they make all of their properties look the same, and they're really not trying to do anything different. So they're cookie cuttering it in a way. So they're buying product in bulk to have it for those next ones. And then some of the other things you could look at are opening up, creating wider walkways. I think that's super important, because as people are living in place longer and they want to have families and they want to entertain, or if somebody's got a disability, making sure that you have better traffic flow throughout the unit is going to be key. And I'm a big proponent of putting grab bars in, especially if this is going to be in a workforce area, that you put grab bars, because that's a safety feature. And there are less than 3% of the homes in the United States that have certain things like proper lighting and the finishes that are chosen, going with a matte finish instead of a gloss finish because of eyesight issues, and then having a 0-step entry, things like that. There's some things you're probably not going to be able to change because it's already been built, but there are elements that you can do to make it a more livable space. And then you get to market it differently to a whole demographic that may not be even considered, oh my gosh, they have grab bars. Well, we need one. We need to have something like that in our home. And it's not going to cost you much. And there's a company that I promote all the time, and I don't make any money from it either. But Wingets is one of my favorite to promote for grab bars, because they created a fastener that can go into sheetrock, and you don't have to know where the blocking is. And some houses may not have blocking for those, but the way it expands on the backside of that sheetrock, they've had over 2.5 million installations without a single failure. So you're able to get quality products in there that can help really make it a more livable space. The other thing I think is so important is the cabinetry. If you are going to go into the extent of replacing cabinetry, make sure you're getting cabinetry that's functional. I've seen investors go in and with a bathroom vanity, pull out an old one that actually had doors and drawers and just put one in that only had 2 doors to it. People need the functionality. So it's really important to get with an expert that understands where to point you in, what products to recommend. And you don't have to go high end. You can get really good products, but it's really thinking about the functionality. And that's something that is so important to me. And I think a lot of people miss that.
1,000,000%, 1,000,000%. And I mean, I completely agree with you when it comes to a team. I mean, that's the whole part of this whole video series is being able to assemble all these great resources. And I didn't know I had so many friends. It's so fun. But, Charles, you mentioned, so for full disclosure, this duplex, half of the duplex has already been sold, right? So
Yes.
Charles is so good that he has already, from the time of showing the property in our video series, home is already closed, everything is done. But the other half belongs to somebody who's actually living there, right?
Yeah.
And they did some upgrades, but they didn't necessarily follow Lisa's advice. They didn't have the opportunity to meet Lisa. So, tell us a little bit about where you could overdo it, where now, sure, you've added value, but the incremental, greater incremental value that you would receive may not be as much, and you may have overdone it, right?
Yeah, the neighbor, really nice neighbor, was nice enough to give me a tour of her house, her side of the duplex. And she had really, really rehabbed it. I mean, it was beautiful, like ready for a magazine. It was so nice. Hardwood floors, modern contemporary white cabinets, quartz countertops, new lighting. It was really, really well done. But she has way too much money in it if it was going to be a rental property for her. Now, she lives there. She loves it. Great. Good for her. But if that was an investor, or if they were going to flip that house, they would be in trouble. She over rehabbed, but her intentions were to live there, not make it a rental property. So, it's okay. But like Lisa said, an investor's really got to run the numbers and see, what the budget can be and not overdo it.
Exactly.
But still make it nice.
Right, exactly. You want it to be tasteful. You want it to have value, but you don't want to overdo it, right? And when I came across renovation loans for the first time, I thought it was really incredible. And this is a perfect product for it, right? Where you look at half of the duplex, so it's just one unit, and you could either look at it from an investment standpoint, or you could look at it as owner occupied, right? And what you would do is you would work with Lisa. Lisa would work with her general contractor. We would come up with, okay, this is what the cost is going to be. We're going to address all of the things that need to be done from a health and safety standpoint, just to pass the inspection part of it, right? To make sure that we pass the appraisal part. But then we have all these other add-ons, right? So we talk about the engineering hardwood. We talked about the paint. We talk all of those items. So we come up with that overall group of things that need to be done. I don't know what that's called, but Lisa, what do you call that? What's it called?
It's called scope of work.
Thank you. So the scope of work, right? So we come up with what that looks like, and then what the costs are associated with that. And I personally do not do renovation loans, but with Guaranteed Rate, we have a renovations loan expert and a renovations loan team. So people come to me, I then work with my renovations expert, and we then pair the two, and I'm involved, right? So I'm staying involved with the client. And from that loan perspective, we understand the scope of work. We get that approved by the underwriter. And then now what we're able to do is we're able to finance the cost, right, of all of those closings. And we're able to close in a 45 to 60 day time frame on the home, right? So the way it works is, we work with the general contractor, get the scope of work. We factor that into the overall, scope of the loan. We go under contract. And once everything is approved from the underwriting standpoint, and obviously the borrower, they have to be qualified based on income and assets and all those other items. But we take the regular loan amount, so they have their 10% or 3.5%, whatever down payment, and then we factor in, okay, this is what the loan amount is. Then we add, let's say it's $35,000 worth of work. We add that to the loan amount, but then we use the after improved value as the loan to value number, right? Because that's really important. And then what we do is once everything has closed, we have up to 6 months to do the renovations, right? So you close on the loan, and then we have up to 5 disbursements where we pay out the general contractor, and then this home just gets transformed. And it's just a real elegant way where you're able to take a home that needs repair that normally would not be financeable, right, by a general standard. But now with a renovation loan, you factor in those minimum things that would pass the inspection from an appraisal standpoint. And then at the end of the day, you have this, nice new home that is good enough for Karen. So that's the key, right? So, I mean, Lisa, have you had experience with renovation loans, and have you seen that?
I learned about renovation loans from you, my friend, and I thought they were brilliant. The one question that I do have for you, though, is because of what we are dealing with delays due to last year, and then
Right.
due to the freeze that Texas had, that kind of thing. When materials are delayed and they're beyond your control, how does that factor into the 6 months that the renovations have to be done, if there is something? So I think that's one important question that I would have for you.
No, it's a very good question. So there is, once you have completed the close of escrow, you're on the clock, right? So, and what's going to happen is it's closed on one side, but it's not closed on the other, right? Because the appraiser comes back to make sure that all the work has been completed. They make and everything is satisfied to the underwriter's standards. So it's like a delayed escrow, right? Where it just gets pushed out, where all that repair work is being done. So if you don't meet your timeline, I haven't seen that case. But again, I don't personally do the renovation loans. My team does. But that is a consideration. So I would say, and that's really why, having the general contractor and then having the underwriter and having all the parties involved, they're going to be looking at it from that timeline. So if you were looking to, import, this amazing marble from India, and it takes 3 years to get there and complete, probably not going to be part of the scope of work, right? It's got to be something that fits within the timeline, fits within the budget, fits within all of those different aspects. So that's a really good question. And I would say that is one of the big reasons why they do that initial due diligence, to make sure that these are things that can be done on time and within the scope, and that, where the investor, because at the end of the day, when you put down your 10%, you are the homeowner, but the bank's really the homeowner. They have 90% of your equity, right? So they're going to make sure that, and they want to be protective of their asset, right? So that's a very important part.
And the general contractor can help too sometimes with knowing the supply situation. So they may guide you to a different product because, well, we can get this one. This one's back ordered. So things like that to speed up the time frame.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're tearing down the home from the, from the studs, now you're getting into construction loans, right? Now you're getting into complete rebuilds, which, to rebuild a big home, it may take longer than the 6 months, but that's a completely different product.
Well, I think that everybody, this has been a great conversation because this is where it's so important to realize that team effort
Mhm.
is so critical, because there is, and it's not a lot, this term is not used in the renovation world much. It's used in new home construction, and it's typically for custom homes, but the whole, and commercial construction companies use it all the time, but it's called design build. And the
Mhm.
whole thing that investors and homeowners need to know, whether it's if somebody's buying this as an investment property to rent out both sides, we're just talking to your duplex, or they're going to live in one side and rent out the other, however it is. If you go in with that mentality of designing it first, designing and planning it first, knowing exactly what you're going to do to it, which is why you need that team of experts, that's when you can go get it costed out. And you're not reacting to the process of a renovation like, oh gosh, I got to run out and go pick out appliances now, or oh gosh, I got to go run. If you can get all that decided upon and done at the beginning, this is where that renovation loan makes sense. And because when you do hit that clock start button go, you know exactly what you're working with, and it's super important.
Yeah, and if you're a buyer and you're looking to use a renovation loan, you're not going to be using it on brand new properties. You're not going to, where the home is just flying off the shelf. Because in that case, I mean, if they are gonna accept a financing offer, it's gonna be 30 days or less, right? In this market, we're looking for a seller that they know that there are some things that need to be repaired, and they have decided not to do that prior to putting it on the market. So that home might sit, and it might sit for 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, and they finally have that buyer that says, "Hey, I'm willing to do the work, but you're going to have to wait another 60 days for us to do this whole process. But we're going to be able to get this thing done. And we're going to let you know if we can move forward based on the inspection, based on the scope of work, based on all of those initial pieces so that we pass those initial hurdles." But it's a really, so Charles, if I were in your position and I were selling a similar type of home, I would be pushing renovation loans all day long, right? As a potential. And letting the seller know that you're either going to get a cash buyer or you're going to get someone that's looking for it from a renovation standpoint, because people, they want the bright and shiny, right?
Absolutely. And we've marketed listings with the renovation loan as part of the marketing. So, hey, this home is perfect for the 203B. It's B, right? B or K? 203B.
203K. 203B is the technical term for FHA standard loan.
Okay, 203K. Yes.
Loan, and then you have Fannie Mae Home Style.
Yes.
And Freddie Mac actually just came out with a new product.
So we've actually put that into the marketing on homes that we know are have to be rehabbed up front. So.
Yep. Yeah, and I hand you those co-branded flyers, right? That talk about renovation loans, so that people have that option at the time of purchase, right? Yeah. So that they now can see that that's a great option. Well, I mean, I'm really, really grateful for the two of you for joining me. I just got the upgrade Zoom thing, so perfect timing. But I really appreciate you joining me. I mean, I think the biggest thing and the lesson here is, when it comes to home buying, whether you're buying it as an investment property, whether you're buying it as for yourself, it helps to have a team, right? Yeah. It really helps to have a team of experts, and also to have a strategy and plan this out, right? I mean, you certainly could go to an open house on a Sunday, find a home, and then, call me up at 8:00 at night and say, okay, I want a pre-approval and let's run into escrow. You could, right? You could do that. Or you could have a strategy and be methodical and plan this whole thing out and get the home that you want in the manner and align with the rules, right? So align with the, just the timelines, align with the products, align with the resources that you have available. I think that's really the key.
Absolutely. Do your due diligence, get good advice.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I think too for new investors, it's really, really important that they really have a good team of all the people that we've talked about, because sometimes new investors have no idea what they're getting into, and if they're not mentored correctly, they can make a lot of mistakes. And to not DIY it if they don't have the experience on the renovation part, because again, it wouldn't cost you much to go get that advice, and it will pay off dividends truly. So
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great
yeah,
evening.
thanks
Thank
for
you both. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Ron.